Welcome to tonight's Fresno City Council District 3 Forum. We're holding it right here in District 3, and it's at the beautiful Westside Church of God in Southwest Fresno. We're televising live via Community Media Access Collaborative, which is co-sponsoring tonight's event with GV Wire and Fresno's leading young professionals. I'm Bill McEwen, your moderator and GV Wire News Director. Tonight, 4 candidates will field questions from our panelists. In addition, I'll pose questions that were submitted tonight from the attendees at the forum and also submitted this week via social media. We'll have a couple rounds of questions, and then we're going to try and have a lively debate among the 4 candidates up here. If I have to jump in to stop them from going at each other too hard, I will do that. Our goal is to have the candidates inform the community where they stand, what the important issues are, and to compare and contrast the candidates. Now let's meet the candidates, and we'll start with Miguel Arias, and you have 30 seconds to tell us about yourselves.
Sure, Miguel Arias, and for the last 10 years I have been part of the executive team at Fresno Unified, where we have achieved some record graduation college going rates. 4 years ago, I took on the task of improving our community colleges. At that time, we've also improved our college going rates and our graduation rates to record highs. Unfortunately, at the same time that we've had academic success, we've also been spending a record amount of our resources in education, in public safety to protect our schools and our colleges from the neighborhoods in which they exist. So I'm running for city council because I think it's time for the city to refocus on its core mission, which should be public safety and creating jobs in the area. And I think it's time for us to have that real conversation about how we do that. That's me. Thank you, Bill.
And now we'll turn to Tate Hill. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Tate.
Hello, Tate Hill. I'm a 30-year resident of District 3, grew up right here in Southwest Fresno. I am a nonprofit professional. My passion is making sure that people that have been in disadvantaged communities, that they have access to opportunities. I'm a small business lender, and for the last decade, I've really worked to make sure that the people of Southwest Fresno voices are heard, whether it's around land use issues, public safety, making sure that we have economic opportunities within our community. I'm excited to have this conversation with you on today, and as always, I'm here to hear from the people of the district and make sure that we have good representation.
Thank you, Tate. And now we'll turn to educator Darren Miller. Darren, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. I should tell you, give you a quarter for that introduction. I'm your educator that's in this race. I spent the last 28 years public education, working all of the grades 7 through 12. I had the fortune of working here at Edison High School, Washington Union's where I got my start, spent some time at Fresno High. For the last 12 years, I've been working in Madera Unified, and I desire to use my skills that I've developed as a successful educational practitioner, working with youth and with their families, with the betterment of their lives on the civic side. And it's far too long that the city of Fresno has had that chasm between educational propensities in our areas. If you look at the educational levels in District 3, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I want to be able to bring that different lens of looking at civic engagement to the council. And as you'll hear me say, it's time for Miller in District 3.
Thank you. And now a familiar face, someone who's been at City Hall before, champion of downtown, Craig Sharton.
Thank you. My name is Craig Sharton. I am a Fresno born native, and I am a lover of our older neighborhoods, our older buildings, our downtown, and locally owned businesses. Those are really the passions of my life, is helping to revitalize our neighborhoods. I started in the Tower District and have been involved with really a lot of the older neighborhoods in Southwest, Lowell, Jefferson, Southeast Fresno for several decades, mostly learning from other cities and bringing back the good, positive lessons I can find in other places to help our city, our hometown, and am especially interested as well in the revitalization of our downtown.
Thank you, Craig. And as you can see, we have a very strong field in this race. Oliver Baines is terming out. He's been there, he will finish having served for 8 years, and open races always attract a lot of interest from political candidates. This time it's attracted interest and a strong field. Now it's time to meet our panel, and leading off is Savag Tadiosian, and he's the host of the Central Valley Ledger. That can be seen on CMAC, Comcast Channel 93, and also on AT&T Channel 99. He lives and works right here in District 3.
I live, I work, and I go to church in District 3, so the district is important to me, and like Bill said, I'm the host of the Central Valley Ledger. I've had a radio program locally here for about 20 years, so welcome.
Thank you. And now we turn to Genevieve. I knew I would stumble over that all night long. Hino Spalding, and she's from Fresno's leading young professionals. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've lived downtown the past 3 years. I'm currently on Fulton Street in the Pearl, and I love it. I'm definitely interested in building a community in District 3.
And on the far side of the panel there's David Taub, and he covers politics and government for gbwire.com. David, very briefly, tell us about yourself.
I am the reporter for GB Wire. We do cover politics and government, so being here tonight is very appropriate. gbwire.com is where to check out our work, and I've been a member of the Fresno community for a while now, so I'm very interested in hearing what the candidates have to say.
Thank you, David. And so we went over the ground rules for the forum. We're not calling it a debate. We're looking for good discussion. And I'll be kind of the referee, you know, and they say in boxing, we want a good, clean fight, right? So just for the benefit of the audience that's watching on live through CMAC and also here at Westside Church of God, if a candidate dances around a question, they've been known to do that a time or two, I will redirect them back to the question. If they raise a point of contention about someone else up there at the head table, that person will get a chance to rebut. And so I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to give them a real easy one. And this one came to us via social media, and I have to say it was the #1 question. It was asked by more than a dozen submitters, all basically around this, and we're going to start with you, Miguel. Should the city fund legal services for the undocumented? And how would you address the needs of undocumented residents, including dreamers?
Good question. So just to give you some background, for me, the conversation around immigration is a very personal one. My family came into the U.S. in 1987. When I was actually before that, when I was 2 years old, and we got legalization through the Reagan amnesty of '86. In there was a provision that if you worked in the fields, picking crops and harvesting them, and you committed for a decade of working in the fields, you could have legal status and then ultimately a path to citizenship. That today, the conversation, we call those folks dreamers. So immigration, legal aid for immigrants, for me, it's a non-issue. We would not look at any other population any differently. If legal services are something that the city needs to do to protect the interests of its residents, then it should do it. It's a pretty simple question. We continuously and always look at protecting the interests of our residents. So the answer for me is absolutely.
So just to be clear here, if this issue returns to the council, you're a member of the council, you will vote yes for funding for legal services for undocumented
I would
residents.
support funding legal services for the undocumented residents that we have in the city of Fresno, but more importantly, I would pursue foundations and private sector investment to do exactly what they should be doing in that area as well.
Tate Hill, what's your take on that question?
So I believe we need a clear pathway to citizenship for residents here in the United States. And I believe that that is primarily the role of our federal elected officials, and we need to hold them accountable to that. At the city council level, I believe that we can leverage, and I would leverage relationships with foundations and our Central California Legal Services and others that are best equipped to provide those legal services. The city of Fresno is not the best situated to provide those services. It also does open up a kind of a Pandora's box of what do we provide and utilize resources for, but I do think we need to create a clear pathway.
Thank you. And Darren Miller, are you ready for that question?
I am. Pretty simple answer, yes. It's what I do on a daily basis. As an educator, we work with the undocumented population without question. A child's needs, a family's needs becomes primary, and I plan on taking that role and that understanding into the civic side of it. That kind of goes back to my introduction. I think that the city is about providing service. It's not about providing service to any particular individual group. It's about serving all that's in the city of Fresno. And unfortunately, we, the city of Fresno, have not always done that. I'm fortunate to come out of the school realm and understand the importance of making sure that all citizens are protected, that they're provided equal protections. And yes, I would be in favor of coming up with some measure or some type of way of doing that as a council person.
Thank you for your answer. Craig Sharton.
Well, I'm Irish Mexican. I was adopted by a Volga German, and I have a half Armenian son. All of those people came to the United States as immigrants, mostly from war-damaged places. So, this particular issue is a little troubling for me. I am very clear on we need a very clear path to citizenship. I support that strongly, but using city legal resources for this is something that I'm undecided on. I'll tell you when I know something or when I don't, but that's not one I'm clear on. I think the best pathway for this is for us to set up a community system of deciding our priorities for funding for social services, like we used to have back when I was on the council, and let people apply for them, and based on that, we would give the money out for the highest community priorities.
Thank you. And now I'll kind of recede from the spotlight, and we'll turn to our panel. And we're going to start with Savag.
Thank you, Bill.
And your first person taking the question will be Tate Hill.
My question is regarding parks. There's a big push right now that we need to create parks and green space, and those are the sexy terms right now. But we have neighborhoods that have parks that people don't go to. I have a park walking distance from me. You're not going to find me there with my kids unless I have my brother or someone else with me. I was there once, and I saw marijuana smoke, I saw homeless, I saw all kinds of issues there. And this park is walking distance from me. So other than the simple hire more cops, hire more police officers, what creative ways can you think of that you'll bring to the council so that people like me can enjoy the park down the street?
Savak, thank you for that question. And when I was in the district and happened to come by your house, you shared some of those same concerns. And as one has utilized that park, I can definitely relate to that. Also having a sister that lives not too far from here who has a similar type of issue with the nearby park. I think there's a couple of things. One, I wholeheartedly support the concept of a park bond that is being circulated now to make sure that we provide maintenance within the current park structures that we have, that we make sure that those parks are safe, that we have either concepts of a park ranger or partnering with our police department to make sure those parks are well lit, that there's security available, and also that people feel safe at those parks. And so we have a stock of parks, and we need to make sure that we maintain them.
Okay, and so to be clear, Tate, you mentioned a park bond. Are you referring to the proposed park tax? What, you support that concept?
Yes, I do.
Very good, thank you. Darren Miller.
I also support the new initiative that goes directly towards parks. But I also know that bad things happen where there's not a presence. And I think that a lot of the parks have issues right now because it's not attractive to the residents. I think that in addition to adding in green space, we do have to do a better job of what we're doing with our maintenance. We have to make it attractive to the citizens in that particular geography and actually outside of the geography so that there is a constant flow of people. I know as another one of those realms I bring from education, kids don't do things where there is a heavy flow of eyeballs. And so we've got to find ways to increase the eyeballs, increase the presence on our particular parks. I was fortunate to be the son of a park director here in the city of Fresno, worked in the recreation department for more than 37 years. And so I understand how things were growing up as a kid in the parks here in Fresno and how it has been deteriorated now some 30 plus years later. And so I want to bring that knowledge to be able to come back. But yes, we need resources. I think our new director, parks director, has a lot of insight to be positive for us, but it does take a lot of money to be able to do those things.
Craig Sharton, tackle
Yes,
the issue of
I'll
parks.
also support the Parks Act. There are good parks and bad parks. Probably the book I've gifted the most in my life is Jane Jacobs' Death and Life of Great American Cities. Some of you in the room will roll your eyes when I say that because I probably gifted it to you. Chapter 5, 1961, she summed it up perfectly. You have to have multiple reasons for people to visit a park throughout the day. You have to design around the park so that you have businesses and residents looking into a park, but you have to have a constant flow to keep them safe. The idea of passive parks creates basically a dead space where people don't feel safe and unsafe things actually happen. So we want to make sure we have enough green space, but we want to make sure that they're designed to be active and have good eyes on the park.
Thank you. And Miguel, we know that the south side of Fresno lacks parks. The parks it does have are in need of renovation. What's your take on this?
I'm going to try and be a little more direct about answering your question, Sabak. You asked for what are the creative approaches to fix the problem. I too have two kids, an 11-year-old in the audience and a 6-year-old. And I too cannot have my kids be at the park by themselves and sometimes not even supervised by me because the transient population, the lack of facilities, the lack of safety, it's a clear problem in the city of Fresno. Not only do we need more green space, but it can't be on its own. We also need the public safety to go with it. Two specific things on the creative end. Park rangers are a really good idea that have worked in other cities. And the park initiative includes funding park rangers that would make sure that there's somebody there that isn't a police officer to monitor the safety and the activity on the park. The second part that the city of Fresno is in real need of is organized sports for kids. The lack of organized sports, and if you're a parent, you know what the cost of organized sports is nowadays. If you want to be in the Little League of Soccer, it costs money. Not too many of our families have the money to pay for the referees, for the clothes, for the cliques. So organized sports has to be part of the initiative in the parks and has to be part of the solution, or else our parks will be beautiful, but they'll be unused.
Okay, so Miguel went just a little over there. If anybody else has something they want to add, we'll give you time to address that now. Okay, you're all good? We're all good. I don't know the questions that the panelists are going to ask, so we're going to go to Genevieve now and see what she has for us, and she will start with Darren Miller.
Thank you, Bill. How do you plan to get the youth and young professionals more involved in our city in regards to volunteering, investment, and being all around more Fresno proud?
It's a question dear to my heart. You have to ask. You have to go to where students are. You have to go to where young people are. You have to ask, and listen. We have to get out of the mode of knowing and telling students and young people what's best for them. Sometimes we have to sit down and listen because we can come up with the best. I think I have some great ideas, but I learn all the time after I talk to my students. It was a great idea 30 years ago. And so I have to make sure that I'm modern, make sure I'm up to date, and the only way I can do that is by engaging not only through the school system, which are natural ways to be able to do that, but also by being creative, creating youth commissions based on geography, creating youth commissions based on interest, and being engaged, being totally engaged and there, present for them. But you have to ask questions, create formats to ask questions, and listen.
Thank you. Craig, you want to tackle that one?
Well, this is something that I can actually tell you what I've done as an example of what I would continue to do. I taught a class unlike any in the country called Urban Entrepreneurship at Fresno State for 14 semesters to get college students engaged in their downtown. Many of them are business people, residents, and active in the downtown community. I started something called the Downtown Academy, which you might have heard of, with Flip, and they're now in their 6th class. Today at 3:30, I spoke to 150 students from Baird Elementary on Mariposa Plaza. It's something I really enjoy doing, and it's the reason why we need to fix up our city, so it's important to have them engaged.
Miguel, how would you engage youth
Well,
and young professionals?
I like to consider I'm still a young professional, but now that I've reached 40, I don't think that applies anymore. The first step to engaging anybody in their community is to help them empathize in which the space they live in. A lot of our young professionals work and play in downtown, and some of them live downtown, but getting to know the schools in downtown is a different environment. Having them understand what the kids in Jefferson and Lowell live through every day, the kids at Yokomi, is the first step. You have to be able to build that empathy. And secondly, you have to be able to connect them to something that they can actually be helpful in. We have connected a lot of our young professionals into mentoring programs of our middle school and high school kids at Gaston and Edison High School. Secondly, you have to really help them understand that this city is theirs. You know, us old timers, me and Craig Shire mostly, it's gonna be our time to go at some point. And it is the young professionals that have to be able to grab this and take it to the next level. We have brought it so far, and it's a good place, but it's yours.
Tate Hill?
Yes, so as the founder of Creator Fresno, the founding president, one of the things that we said we need to really look at is the quality of life issues within our city. How do we make the heart of our city, downtown, but the city as a whole, a place where entrepreneurship, innovation is at the heart of our city. And so from my experience, still being somewhat young, is young people want to be involved and they want to be engaged in real and practical ways. Not in just youth commissions, which are great for young people, for students, but create those opportunities for them to really be engaged on boards and commissions with the city so that their views and their perspectives are valued. Support entrepreneurship in ways that allow them to help grow our economy. And so I think there are real tangible ways that we can encourage young people to be involved and engaged within our community.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn to GVWire.com's David Taub for the next question. And this round we'll start off with Craig Sharp.
Thank you, Bill. Candidates, recently the City Council passed the Caglia Industrial Park in the south end of this district. Do you agree with that council decision? And how would you balance the needs for bringing jobs to the city and the district and the environmental quality for the neighbors who live there?
Yeah, that's a trick, especially in the older built part of the city. You know, the main thing for me is to support the businesses that are already here rather than trying to steal them from some other city with tax incentives. So, you know, we have a lot of businesses like the food manufacturers. So we found there were 150 food companies in the city of Fresno. So we created the Fresno Food Expo to bring buyers from around the world to buy our local products, which creates jobs, creates a tax base, and brings more revenue into our economy. Those are the kinds of things that we really need to do rather than looking at, again, the old style of economic development, which is big industrial and bringing them in with tax incentives.
Miguel, I see you're right in there, but the
Sure.
question is about industrial expansion versus quality of life, the environment, and especially here where we have so many air pollution problems.
Yeah. You know, the Caglia family has a responsibility to develop the property in a way that creates jobs and supports the local economy. The city has a larger responsibility to make sure that there is a district implementation committee that vets out the project completely. In this case, that didn't take place. That clearly is unacceptable. I'm not supportive of an approach that just incentivizes the Amazon. So you give them $30 million to Amazon, $18 million to Ultra, and $10 million to Gap, without requiring them to hire local residents. District 3 residents have to take on the burden of 8,000 trucks, diesel trucks, every single day passing through for that Amazon to set up shop. But none of them are guaranteed a job in that same place that our tax incentive dollars are going towards. I'm not supportive of that. If I was a council member, I would have not supported giving that kind of money to a corporation that doesn't need our money, and secondly, has no guarantee that residents in District 3 would actually benefit instead of simply taking on the burden of such an industry. We, like Craig Sharn, support small businesses, and the world's a Bitwise. Bitwise doesn't require a penny of our help, and yet they're excelling. That's where we should focus our attention.
And Tate, business, this is right in your wheelhouse. I'm sure the audience wants to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so in a district and a neighborhood that has 15 to 20% unemployment and extremely high concentrated poverty, we need jobs in our city and our district. And one of the things I believe is people with good intentions can always come and find a viable solution. And so I think there's a responsibility of the business community, but also of our city government to find the best solution that addresses the needs of our community. As a member of the Southwest Pacific Plan, one of the things that we looked at is making sure that we had certain types of businesses in certain areas. And we're leveraging the space where the Caglia Development and Ulta and Amazon are at to make sure that those types of elements are not in the midst of residential areas. But I do believe that the business has an obligation to make sure that the residents are made whole in this situation, and I believe that's something that can be done.
Mr. Miller?
I support business, both big and small, but I also don't support business at the expense of the communities. That area out there is a lack of planning, which plagues District 3. Caglia and other businesses out there should be recruited and brought into the city of Fresno, but it should not obviously have been put in that area. That school that's there, Orange Center, has been there for more than 60 years. So to say all of a sudden now that community was not there beforehand when all the research and development was done, that's an absence of planning. And I think that is definitely one of the reasons why I'm getting into this race is I don't want to see this absence of planning and how we're building our infrastructure business-wise versus our schools and versus our historical cultural components that we have in District 3. You've got to have a strong leader that understands the history and is willing to modernize into the 21st century. So I say again, I support business, both large and small, but not at the expense of what District 3 has culturally and ethically.
Miguel raised a new point there, local hiring rules being added to projects that are approved by the city council. Opportunity for any of the candidates up here if they want to take 10, 15 seconds and let the audience know where they stand on that.
You bet. I don't know if you have an order for that,
You
but I'm
spoke
happy
first,
to jump
there you
in.
go.
I totally agree with him, and will only add on that the construction jobs are coming from out of state for those buildings. That's unconscionable to me, again, with our unemployment rates. And we're trying to get more people into the trades and apprenticeship programs, and here the buildings are being built from people from Texas. Drives me nuts. Also, HUD Section 3 requires that we use local people where a lot of the projects are built, and that has been mostly lip service, and I think any of us will work hard to make sure that that isn't the case any longer.
I also believe that local hire and utilization of local businesses and diverse businesses within the city of Fresno should be a priority. Most of our anchor institutions, our cities, our school districts, our community colleges have done an extremely poor job of utilizing local businesses, minority businesses, and as city council member, I would look at with incentives that there would be a minimum a 10 to 15% local hire goal that could have easily been met by Amazon, Ulta, or any of the other projects.
Darren Miller?
I also agree that there needs to be local hire ordinances that put in all the projects that we have here. But I also know that we've missed an opportunity. We've got, with the career technical education push that's going on through the federal government and with the state, there's an opportunity for the city to directly partner with whatever the job industry, the desires and the jobs that we have here in the area, that can utilize the local school districts, K-12, as well as the community college, to be able to fill some of those voids at absence of planning. I go back to that. Most of the business fiascos that we have in District 3 is not because of intent or desire, it's about absence of planning.
Thank you very much for that. And now we're going to go on to another round of questions. And on this one, we'll start with Genevieve.
Alrighty. What are your thoughts on improving the school district? While the two entities are separate, without good schools, everyone's property values plummet. What will you do to build a positive working relationship with the school district?
And we start that one with Darren Miller.
One of the things we have to do is be transparent. Currently, the school district that I was educated in, Fresno Unified, has not done a very good job of exiting students prepared for college. I want to say it's like 3% of the students that are graduating on a regular basis are quote unquote prepared for college and going on to higher education. I think that has to change. Do I have the answer for that? I do not, because the problem is multifaceted, it's multi-generational, but I think the one thing you have to do is you have to engage yourself, you have to understand from the civic side as well as from the educational side. We have a great example to the northeast of us in Clovis. There is not a community that's developed out there where the Clovis Unified is absent from the discussion and those plannings. That has to happen in District 3. There's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunities with growth. There's 5 different school districts that are encompassed in District 3, and all of those school districts have to be at the table when we're having those discussions about what we're going to do long-term in planning. Can't be secondary.
Craig Chardon?
The overall priority for me is that healthy neighborhoods, by and large, produce healthy people. And we have to have healthy neighborhoods. That's on the city side. We saw that in Lowell, where without any additional investment in Lowell Elementary, when we invested time and resources into the neighborhood, the school test scores went up 30 points in 1 year, more than any other school. Again, with no additional resources from Fresno Unified. At that point, the superintendent said, now I see what you mean by the importance of neighborhood revitalization. The schools need to help and be a part of the neighborhood, and the neighborhood needs to help the schools. And when we get those things working together, that's going to be the ultimate solution. But we also need to make sure our kids don't have lead in their blood, which is the biggest issue, I think, facing District 3, because it's impairing their ability to learn and function in the school system.
Thank you. Miguel?
Thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. Schools are very important for a neighborhood. How we invest in them, how they develop. A few years ago, about 10 years ago, Fresno Unified's graduation rate was 60%. Now it's 85%. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Have we made tremendous gains? Yes. Our teachers have worked their butts off to be better. Same thing at Fresno City College. We were failing. Only 10% of students were graduating in 2 years because there wasn't investment in public education. As a result, we now have an MOU with State Center and Fresno Unified where now we're going to be providing college courses at Sunny Side and Edison High School. We also have an MOU to locate a high school campus on the Fresno City College campus. With the city of Fresno, we opened up our pools and our green space to be able to partner and be a better neighbor. The biggest thing, though, that we still are lacking is schools are being asked to be everything for every neighborhood. We are not only the educator now, but we're the provider of green space, we're the provider of swimming pools, we're the provider of police officers, we're funding the police departments. The city of Fresno has to do what they do well better in order for us to come along and also improve the neighborhood.
Thank you.
And I think those things that the city of Fresno needs to do better is relating to the development in those neighborhoods. We know that it's the development of housing, the improvement of property values that helps to enhance our school districts, to give them the resources in part that they need to help educate our communities. And so also I think there needs to be a more succinct relationship between the city council members and the school board trustees and around engaging our communities in the district. Very rarely is there a joint meeting between the city of Fresno and the school district. The few times that that has happened, particularly in District 3, was around the Southwest Specific Plan process. And with that, you saw the movement around State Center, Gaston. And so we do see examples here in District 3 when the city of Fresno and the school districts work together, it can have positive outcomes.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to David Taub for the next question.
Thank you, Bill. Candidates, we often hear what you want to spend money on, projects, ideas you want to spend money on. My question to you is, what would you cut from the city budget?
Well, there's a good question.
That's a good question.
Can I
Let's
take
see.
that?
Let's see who gets to go first with that one, and that one will be Craig.
Perfect. And by saying it's a good question, that means I don't have a quick answer for it. So let me answer it by not answering it directly.
That's not allowed.
Maybe it'll get there. The one thing that drives me crazy about the city budget process is that every year it turns into drama. The one thing I know that every nonprofit in the community does is after approving their budget, approving their minutes, the next thing they do is approve the financial reports. I would propose that we start with quarterly and move to monthly financial reports so that we can keep track of things throughout the year. The other thing that I would propose is that we lengthen the budget cycle to at least 5 years so that we start putting maintenance for all of our parks and our buildings long-term into the budget so that we don't end up with the $12 million budget in May that's upside down. I mean, upside down by $12 million. We should know those things well in advance and stay on top of the budget.
So people talk about there's a lot of fat in government budgets. David's taken it a step further. What would you cut out?
Is that for me, Bill?
Yes, it
I
is.
just want to make sure I don't go over my time. I'll be very, very, very clear. We have 27 attorneys at City Hall.
Oh, that's a good one.
27 attorneys. The city also recently approved us taking on military equipment for our police department. Absolutely 2 areas that are not necessary. Those are areas you reprioritize. And not to pick on attorneys, because I do know they're of huge value to anybody, but the city council controls the city attorney's office. They have complete control over that department, and they've allowed it to grow to 27 attorneys. They've also allowed us to go down the path of militarizing our police department, which is the opposite of what we need in the city of Fresno. I would start there.
Thank you. Tate Hill, same question for you.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to answer this a little bit like Craig, but I would say really I think we need to, on a more regular basis, and I know we've done some review of, on an annual basis, of our city expenditures and expenses, and past councils and mayors have really looked at that. But I really think we need to figure out how we invest within our communities and our districts. And for me, that would be the priority. How do we make sure that we're maximizing our city resources within the district so that people feel those investments? When I talk to residents, they're concerned about city maintenance. They want to make sure that their streets are taken care of. They do want to make sure that there's sufficient public safety. And so we need to really be looking at how do we create sufficient investment within our neighborhoods, and especially in District 3.
Thank you. Darren?
I would want to get smarter. And what I mean by that is most of us know that the budget has already been cut over a series of years. It's really affected our workers, the people, the blue collar people. I would want to make sure that the managerial aspects of that has paralleled those reductions, making sure that we haven't become top heavy, and if there's departments and things that can be consolidated to manage it better. I think that was one thing. I agree with the demilitarization of our police department. It is unnecessary. It's not a direction that we want to go in. So I think those monies have not been spent wisely. Travel. We've been sending council members to all sorts of places to do all sorts of research that we don't see the fruits of their labor and the fruits of their travel when they come back here. So taking a look at the travel budget and what's being expended there, I think is another resource that we need to take a look at. So it's just being smarter and being more responsible with the funding that we do have, seeing if we can't consolidate to make cuts in that general direction.
So now we go to hopefully what will be the fun portion of this and lightning. And if you've been to a city council meeting, you know the council president controls. There's a little red light when you want to talk. And so I want the audience to be able to see you. You four are the council members for District 3. We're having a meeting, and I really want to stay out of this. We want to see how you react, how you get along. And did I jump the gun on you, Sabag? Do you have one more question?
Sure, I could ask.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. So it's no secret that District 3 has slumlords. In my neighborhood, we've dealt with slumlords and people who don't really care about their property. They're making money through various rental agreements that they have. But along with slumlords, there's something called slum tenants. How can you ensure that both the landlords and the tenants are going to get a fair shake in the city's efforts to mitigate substandard housing?
And we start with Miguel.
So that's not an easy solution. I bought my first rental property I think at 24 years of age. I've been down the path where you renovate a complete house and then a year later, you know, the toilets are plugged, the plumbing has to be redone, the electrical has to be completely replaced. It's not an easy answer, nor an easy solution, but I think there's two things we got to do. One is we have to deal severely with the worst of the worst slumlords there are in the city. Secondly, more importantly, you have to be able to expand affordable housing stock. Without more affordable housing, people have no other option but to be in those conditions and to behave in that way. And in the city of Fresno, I have not been happy with the work of the Housing Authority. They've essentially have become a monopoly to affordable housing in Fresno. And from West Fresno to North Fresno to Northeast Fresno, nobody wants affordable housing in their backyard because of that historical history and experience that they've had with Section 8 residents and housing near them.
Tate Hill.
Well, here in District 3, and particularly we're here in West Fresno right now, where about 45 to 50% of the housing is rental-based housing. We really need to engage both the tenant and the owner. Part of the challenge is a lot of those slumlords a lot of times are outside of the area, outside of the city, and so we need to have a stronger process around our code enforcement and be aggressive about these issues. I know this is something that's important to the residents, and oftentimes they feel that when they make a call to the city, there isn't a sufficient response. But having someone at the city council and someone that believes that this is important, that would have staff to address these kind of constituent issues is a way to deal with it. And also when that tenant is not taking care of business, that we approach and we, in some cases, have to fine the property owner to make sure that their tenant is also in compliance.
Thank you.
This is not my background, but I'm gonna be real creative on the fly. One of the things I think that has to happen, I hadn't thought about it on the tenant side, I always thought about it on the slumlord side of it. When I think one of the things we need to do is identify. Identify and publicize those who are not taking care of their properties on the landlord side of it. If we do have slumlords in any area, come up with some type of identification way, whether it be in a publication or website or something along those lines, like a Crime Stoppers type of thing. These people are slumlords not taking care of their properties. That's one. Do the same thing on the tenant side. You know, if you have bad credit, you cannot get a rental property. You cannot go into certain establishments and businesses and those type of things. The same types of rules and regulations after you define what the city defines what a slumlord is and what a slum tenant is. Once you come up with those definitions, once people get into one or both of those lists, you list it and publicate it, and then people have an opportunity to make choices. I think one of the things in absence of that is the choice of being able to do better.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is one of those issues that I've, again, worked on for a long time. So interior inspection ordinance is long overdue. Such progressive cities as Lancaster and Concord have had those for 20 years, so that is a best practice for fixing up our neighborhoods. I called together all of the commercial property owners in Lowell and had a meeting at City Hall and asked them, you know, they all complain about the $5,000 and $10,000 repairs that they do over and over. I said, I wouldn't do that twice. You are free to share information with each other and ask for, rental history on your application. Check with each other, because we had people destroying a property and then renting from the next guy right across the street. So they have the ability to share that information, and they started networking on their problem tenants. And also from the Housing Authority side, I worked on eliminating their subsidization of slumlords by tightening their inspection program and kicking out bad property owners from that system.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to go to that debate format. You're all the 4 council members for City Council District number 3.
Is there someone that could throw me a bottle of water back
Sure,
there?
we'll bring you up a bottle of water.
The
throw you-
hot air dries
I
my
can
mouth
throw you a
out.
bottle.
Can you bring 2 please? Thank you.
Several
Yeah, while
bottles
you're
of
up here, why
water.
don't
How's
you pull up
that?
a chair?
Exactly.
And if anybody in the audience would like some water, feel free to get it.
Just stay up.
So
Thank you.
marijuana dispensaries are legal in the state of California. They're not legal in the city of Fresno. Surrounding communities are going this route. They anticipate taking in more in taxes than the cost of regulation and the like. So I'm sure the audience would like to hear what you would do or what you would put out there in regards to marijuana if you were on the city council. So gentlemen, have at it and don't be bashful. Who wants to go
Is there a
first?
question, or is it like you want to know
No,
our
I
stance?
want to hear you.
Well, I think with the legalization of marijuana and all the aspects that goes along with it, takes on a lot of responsibilities. And we as the city of Fresno have to take that on. I mean, for me, it's no different than what we do with alcohol. I mean, you can't walk around on the streets drinking a beer. There's public intoxication. Same thing should be in place for the use of marijuana. The distributing parts of it and the growing and how all that goes because of the profit that goes along with it. We've got trucks all day long hauling liquor all over the state of California. It's a very profitable market, but because of the federal taxes and the federal laws that goes along with it, it makes it a little bit more risky to pull over a liquor truck. I think that the federal government also, one of the other things that has to happen, for lack of my terms, the marijuana needs to be, their classification needs to be changed so that it's not classified in the way that it is on the federal government. Once it gets I don't know what the correct word is, but once it gets desensitized, then I think the cities and municipalities will be a little bit more comfortable with being able to take that on. But it's a huge responsibility, and Fresno's got to get ready for it because it's coming.
Yeah, that was great. I agree with exactly what he said. You have to be responsible. We're regulators. It's legal, and we need to regulate it responsibly. We need to measure our decisions to see if they're working or causing problems so that we can adjust going forward. That's what good policy and regulation is. We don't, it's the same as alcohol. You just have to keep an eye on it and make sure it's not getting out of hand, but it's also caused untold political drama and drama in the community way beyond what it's worth.
It's something that we see in the south part of the city is a constant, and we're giving examples about alcohol and the challenges. But when I was on the District 3 Implementation Committee, one of the things that we often would see is the concern about concentration of alcohol and liquor within our neighborhoods. And there will be a tendency for a number of things, of course, to follow that. And so we have to really have a very strict and a purposeful way of managing marijuana within our city. There's a couple of things that we can do that would mitigate some of those issues, similar to how we do with alcohol, but looking at concentration of permits, making sure that marijuana dispensaries and so forth are not near certain locations, schools, churches, so forth. Also, I think there's the other part of making sure that the store owners or the distributors, I guess what they would call it, that we're heavily monitoring their their production and sale and how they manage their location. That's going to be really critical. Just as we've seen with alcohol, there are certain stores that are good players and there's no issues, and then there's others where there's loitering, there's consumption on site, and so we have to have a partnership with the police department and our store owners to help them understand the concerns of the community and how they manage that.
So Bill, let me take this a little different direction. Let's be very, very frank in the room. What we're doing is not determining or treating something like alcohol. We're establishing a new industry, and we're going to choose winners and losers, both the people who are going to enter in the business market and the people where they're going to be located at. My concern with this conversation so far is that we want to compare it to alcohol. In the world of alcohol, every time we have opposed a liquor store popping up near a school, it always gets an exemption from the Planning Commission, and it always gets approved by the City Council. So my concern is treating this like alcohol license is that we're going to end up with the highest concentration of liquor stores, just the way it is now in District 3. You get the right consultant, City Hall will look the other way and find a way to say 400 feet away from the school is okay to have a liquor store. We're just going to stop selling liquor at 10 versus midnight. We're going to not allow individual bottles versus, the 6-packs. So my concern is that we're not having a frank conversation that this is an actual industry that we're approving and establishing for the first time. The legalization of marijuana was done for 2 reasons. One, to decriminalize it. Folks, a whole generation of folks, black and brown folks, went to jail for selling marijuana. The idea was to decriminalize it because the system could not withstand any more folks going to prison or jails. Second part was to generate revenue. Everybody wants some money. Nobody wants a location near their house, near their neighborhood. I have been very clear that I'm not okay with an ordinance right now in Fresno because nobody's showing me the details of the language. Everybody wants to regulate it, everybody wants to spend the money before it gets here, but nobody wants to tell you that's gonna be in your neighborhood. Now, do I think that it's a bad thing to have in a neighborhood? Absolutely not. Do I think it should be equitable across the city? But more importantly, the money should also remain in the area in which it is being generated. And my idea and my conversation with the council members have been, everybody in this city wants a police station in their neighborhood. Everybody wants a park. Nobody wants a liquor store. Nobody wants an adult bookstore. Nobody wants a pedophile in their neighborhood. So if you want a police station and you're saying that marijuana for medical purposes, because wherever we place a medical dispensary, it's going to be recreational too. And that's a good thing. Then we should do it right next to a police station. Attach it. Make them share the same wall, make them share the same security system. If this is about having folks have access to safe medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, which is legal in California, then make it safe and make it accessible and make it equitable across the city. But don't go having a conversation about regulating it and already coming up with plans to spend the millions of dollars while the neighborhood suffers the consequences.
So Darren wanted to jump in on that.
I just think that is, I want to deal in opportunity. And I think one of the things you talked about earlier is about the job industry. If you do your research and look at the states that have legalized it, Colorado and some other states, yeah, they have their shortcomings, but it's been not only profitable for them, they've been able to create jobs. One of the things that people don't look at here is because of our agricultural background, it's an opportunity to diversify what we're doing agriculturally to get into the grow business. We have farmers right now who are not able to sustain themselves as they have traditionally, being a Fresno boy, understanding all the nuances that goes along with that. Here's an opportunity with a crop market based on not just recreational sales, but also on the medicinal purposes of it, which are bona fide, to take advantage of that. And I think that what we need to do is we need to start looking at this as an opportunity rather than a hindrance.
And I would agree with you, it's an opportunity, but it should be an opportunity for everybody. If we treat this like a regular business, we're gonna say to folks, the folks that are in this city, in South Fresno, the black and brown folks who went to prison and went to jail because they were engaged in that market, are not gonna have an opportunity to open up a shop in this area. Because the city council will pick winners and losers. We have to make sure there's language there.
Yeah.
Other cities have outlined language where a percentage of the business licenses that are approved in the city have to go with people with backgrounds. They've also waived felony convictions of drug use in the past to allow you to have a business license. If this is about an opportunity for everybody, then let's make it about an opportunity for everybody. But there are real conversations that have to be had because folks approved to legalize it. They did not vote to put it next door. And we have an obligation as city officials to be very clear with them where they're gonna go, what security measures will be in place, how business will be held accountable, and more importantly, that money remains in that area.
Okay, so I'm
wait,
going to
wait.
raise my pet peeve right now, and was raised during
I
this.
did, I did not bring my dog in.
Oh, okay. So, we know many neighborhoods in Fresno have way too many liquor stores as defined by the number, by state beverage control, and yet this present city council has voted in liquor license after liquor license after liquor license. 18 months ago or so, the Fresno Bee wrote a big expose on how all the liquor stores, not all, but a huge number were on the south side of town. Mayor Brand has said, hey, I'm going to do something about it. We haven't seen him do a darn thing. Every month, there's more liquor stores put in, and sometimes I get the impression from the city council that they consider a liquor store business development. And you all know that it's not. So I'm going to go down the line.
Well,
Are you gonna
still,
hold-
it follows on the marijuana thing. And this is not a traditional opinion, so I'll just say that.
Okay.
But what we do, especially in Fresno, is we focus on quantity kinds of issues. So we don't like apartments, we don't like, we talk about 5 units to the acre or 10 or 15. We talk about liquor stores, all these other things. And what we really don't like is crappy stuff, right? We don't talk about quality issues. So in Lowell, they were talking about a liquor store, and I said, or a grocery store, and they said, we don't want it to sell liquor. I said, what if it just sold locally made beer and wine? Everyone goes, oh, that'd be really nice, right? So let's think about what we mean. What we don't like is crappy liquor stores with signs all over the windows, selling a bunch of junk, selling honey buns on the counter to our kids for breakfast, and all of the negative stuff with the unkept landscape all around it. If someone puts something nice in, you know, then all of a sudden we don't mind it. If someone builds a beautiful apartment, we don't mind it. But it's the junk that we get tired of. So from a regulating standpoint, whether it's a liquor store or marijuana store or an apartment or affordable housing, we have to raise the quality, especially in Southwest Fresno. There's nothing wrong with someone in Southwest Fresno being able to go buy a bottle of wine and taking it over to their friends when they go visit for dinner, and you can't get that here. Not with all the liquor stores we have are they carrying any local wine. So we need to change what we're arguing about.
Okay, we good there?
Well, I just want to add in one other element, is that when you look at the state and the direction it's going with the cannabis use, there are also provisions put in there that deals with equity, making sure that there are minority and women organizations and all types of people have access to be able to be part of that industry. And so I disagree that when people say that this is different than the alcohol is out. That horse is out of the barn. It's going to be hard to pull it back. Here we have an opportunity by doing it right and doing it with the community's input to be able to make sure we do the distribution of cannabis and marijuana, medicinal side, or whether it be on the recreational side, in the right way. And I just think that I see it as an opportunity that's beneficial to all of Fresno.
Thank you.
And we always talk about we want Fresno to be a business-friendly community. We want to support small businesses and entrepreneurs and innovation. And marijuana definitely is, if anything, an opportunity of innovation. And I think we can, you know, as someone else has already pointed out about leveraging our agricultural background, the resources that we have here to do it the right way. Oftentimes we do things the wrong way because we haven't taken the right approach. But I think we can take whether it's marijuana or other business opportunities and really say, how do we make Fresno a place of innovation and a place that attracts people to come here?
Thank you. Right now, We'd like to thank Pastor Paul Binion and also Ann Gaston of Westside Church of God for opening up the church and this fine hall for the forum tonight. We also want to thank Fresno's leading young professionals, Brian Harley from CMAC, our panelist, and our forum coordinator who's doing the signs at me, Randy Reed. And now we're going to go to another round of questions, and this time it starts with David.
Thank you, Bill. Candidates, where do you stand on project labor agreements when the city grants public works projects?
And Miguel gets that one first.
Oh, great. I've actually been a proponent of project labor agreements for us to have a real, honest conversation about the benefits and the challenges to project labor agreements. When it comes to city projects, specifically around affordable housing, I think that the affordable housing, in the world of city projects, if the majority of the money is going to is public funds, then we should have a project labor agreement connected to it. That ensures that local folks are hired. The city of Fresno has a really bad record of hiring local. In public education, Fresno Unified and State Center, 90% of all our construction contracts remain local. In the city of Fresno, for some reason, they haven't been able to make that same level of expectation for work and contractors to be local. So I do think it's the right conversation for us to engage in the city of Fresno, but it has to be a benefit, and that requires real analysis and real conversations with both industries.
So often we talk about the project labor agreement, and really what I would like for us to think about is, in a broader scope, is around community benefits agreements. Project labor agreements are just strictly about the labor itself, and what we have found, particularly in our south part of our city, there are not as many residents as we would like, and the building trades and that are employed in those unions. And so there's a couple of things I think we can do around community benefits agreements that look at the locality of those hires. There's examples in other parts of the city down in Los Angeles where they had dedicated amount of hours based on the zip code to ensure that there's employment within the areas. Also looking at minority and local and diverse contracting. Again, this is something that our city, our community has done a very poor job in utilizing diverse businesses. And so community benefits agreements look at it more comprehensively.
Darren Miller?
Project labor agreements are definitely needed, but it has to be prescriptive. We don't go to the doctor and walk through the door and say, I'm sick, give me something. We tell them it's my elbow, we tell them it's my shoulder, we tell them it's my stomach, and then he gives us medication or writes out a script specific to that. But the project labor agreements, we have to do that as well. What is it that we want to have come out of this labor project that we're putting together? I think this is another opportunity for the city of Fresno to partner with their 5 surrounding school districts under the guise of the career technical education push that's going on right now to be able to create specifically targeted jobs. So now when a person, Amazon comes in and we need people to make yellow 30-second signs, now Edison High School or Washington Union High School can direct their CTE program to be able to produce these yellow 30-second signs. I think that the project labor agreements are needed, but it needs to be way more prescriptive and inclusive of the resources that we have here.
Craig Sharton, PLAs, you've tackled that before, I'm sure.
Yep, so I do agree with project labor agreements. I agree with Tate's assessment as well. These things need to be comprehensive. You know, this is a tiny little piece of a very big effort that needs to happen, and I think all of us actually agree on this pretty well. It needs to be coming through the schools. It needs to be coming through the neighborhoods. We need to be getting everyone involved. We need to be getting our local businesses the work. The only way we're going to change our economy is by getting more in and letting less leave, and that's how you grow your economy. And that's just one little piece of it, but it has to be very comprehensive. I did work with the city of Fresno to go as far as the charter would allow, and the council did approve giving a 5% bonus in bids to local companies because we were losing jobs over hundreds of dollars sometimes.
Savog Tadeusian with Central Valley Ledger, your question is up.
Thank you, Bill. So there's been a lot of attention on downtown, and there recently has been attention not too far from here because of a new development and schools, which is all great. It's great for District 3. However, there's something else in District 3, the Tower District, which is closer to here than River Park, which is closer to here than Fresno State. How can we ensure that the Tower District is not forgotten? Because recently we heard a business in the tower was closing because of lack of traffic in the general area.
Where do we start?
We start with Tate Hill on that one.
Perfect.
You know what, I was just walking in the Tower District this weekend and talking to some residents about some of these kinds of concerns. And just, you know, I think there's a couple of things. Olive Avenue needs major maintenance. The road is rough. I mean, and so it really is a description of how we have maintained a key retail and restaurant district and corridor within our city. And so we need better maintenance of our streets and our neighborhoods there in the area. Also, while we want to ensure public safety, we want to make sure that people feel comfortable participating. Once was a place where you would go to have entertainment and so forth. Now a lot of people just they don't go to the Tower District at all. Also making sure that if we need to update the Tower specific plan, it's been a couple of years, and so I think there's a couple of things that we can do along with some incentives for storefront improvements.
Thank you.
Simply, longtime visitor of the tower. Paint in that particular area will go a long ways. One of the things, thank you, Craig, invited me to a downtown partnership meeting. I forget the young lady's name that came out of Oregon. Michelle Reeves came, and that's one of the things she talked about, is that the Tower District, because it's landlocked, is not going to be able to go through a tradition or enormous metamorphosis to change it. So how do we take what we have there and understand and keep the essence of it while sprucing it up? Paint, road maintenance, security is a huge issue in the tower right now with people with the snatching, the crashing runs that are happening down there. How is the city engaging and making sure that people are comfortable going to the tower and that the tower is attractive? I just think a simple solution that the city could do very well is just buy some paint, give it to the storekeepers, and let them be creative in what it is they're doing. That's a simple fix. I know it's not going to fix all the issues, but it's at least a start.
Two things. One is it's not Tower versus downtown. We want all of our districts to be successful. It's not downtown versus Chinatown or even downtown Clovis. We want Clovis and Visalia. We want everyone to have good downtowns and good neighborhood commercial districts. There is something that is done around the country called having business associations or property owner associations. I think San Diego has 17 of them. Every inch of Boston is in a district. We formed the Property Owners District in 2010 in Fresno, 10 years after Visalia had done it. The Tower doesn't have that kind of an organization. They have a volunteer organization with only a few members. They need to have a legitimate Tower District business or Tower District Property Owners Association, and then they can set their priorities and they can begin to follow through on accomplishing their goals. And as a council member, I would fight to get money in the budget to get that established.
Miguel?
I'm going to try and walk you through a couple of areas in the Tower District. One is the Tower neighborhoods. Safety is a challenge. As we're walking precincts, the same folks who are scoping out to break into the garage are walking precincts with us. Their smash and grabs are there. Safety is a concern for residents in that area. Safety is not a concern for the business corridor. There's a lot of great events that are taking place. But what is a concern there is that there is no infrastructure underneath the ground. The infrastructure underneath the ground is more than 100 years old. It cannot sustain additional business activity. We also have to make sure that when we're doing events in the Tower District, it's not a place where we are oversaturating the events with police presence. Police also provide a level of safety, But when you overdo and oversaturate, it's so costly for the event planners, and it becomes a disruption for the attendees. And so lastly, I would say you have to be able to connect Tower to downtown. By itself, it's not good enough. It has to be part of a bigger region.
Thank you. And Genevieve, your question.
How do you think District 3 can become an example for other districts under your leadership?
And Darren?
At one point in time, many of you in the room may not realize that, but District 3 was the center of this great city that we call home. And understanding and knowing the history, in particular our ethnic communities, our ethnic neighborhoods, the German towns, the Chinatowns, Armenian towns, developing festivals, developing an identity around our cultural importance, I think is one of the ways that we can highlight what's going on in District 3 and draw not just the rest of Fresno, but the surrounding areas. Fulton Mall is an opportunity for us to do lots of different things down there. You're probably not gonna like it being a resident because you won't be able to get in and out of your establishment down there, but I think that corridor, now that it's open, provides a lot of opportunities for us to be able to do things. I envision us creating some type of ethnic, cultural museum, possibly, area, where we have the different ethnicities that we have here. Instead of having the museums all over the city of Fresno, that we can bring them into District 3. Now that draws people into that particular area. So being creative and basing it off of our cultural and historical realm.
So I think when people identify problems, it is a negative. But when you start addressing problems, I think it becomes attractive. And so I think as we go through our neighborhoods and identify what our clear priorities are and then start setting to work on them and being innovative in doing that, that it begins to attract human resources, financial resources, government partnerships, educational partnerships. Everyone wants to get involved. You look at the city of Detroit, biggest mess in the country, and people started flocking there when they started doing interesting things like urban agriculture, rebuilding neighborhoods, creating artist community. So having problems isn't our problem. It's our ability to say, let's be innovative and creative and get everyone involved in solving them. And then I think people will be very attracted to watch what we're doing here, and we'll be the leader for the rest of the community.
Yeah. District 3 has the opportunity to be a leader for the whole Central Valley. We're the only area in the city where you have a suburb, a rural, and an urban setting. We have 3 school districts that have from the 4th largest in the state to a 1 school district system in Orange Center. We also have a college, district where District 3 is going to have its headquarters of the college system here. It's going to have a new college campus here, and it already has part of Fresno City College here. It is a place where we actually have the opportunity to lead the whole valley in how you develop options for people to work, play, and live in one city in every transaction and every transition of your life. When you're young and single and you're a professional, an urban setting is great for you. When you grow up, you probably don't want to raise a family in a balcony. You want a backyard. So District 3 has the opportunity to really set examples on how you do development and neighborhoods well for different sectors of our Central Valley community.
Tate?
So I think about 3 different ways that I would move District 3 forward. One is around community engagement. The people of District 3 are very engaged and want to be very engaged with their city council and what's going on, but there's not always options and opportunities for them to be engaged. And so I would create a community advisory council as a way to make sure that people are engaged and connected what's going on, that we have a vibrant economy and an urban economy. The district should be a place for retail and small business, that we're seen as a regional hub for not just for Fresno, but the entire Central Valley. And then that also, we do that by attracting the capital and the resources necessary to be able to support businesses. And then as we're starting to see with the Southwest Pacific Plan, the Downtown Neighborhoods Plan, is that we can have good urban planning. And we could be those examples around our mix of housing and parks. and be that example for the entire region.
And so we have time for an extra round. You guys have been on such good behavior. No need for rebuttal. And David Taub, do you have a question? And this one will start with Craig Sharton, right?
Thank you, Bill. Candidates, how would you describe race relations in the city of Fresno?
Really, the last question, huh? That's the one you're gonna take. That's completely unfair for a minute.
You know, we have a long way to go. We have to address issues of race. Frankly, we have to have a lot of community conversation about it. We have to demonstrate that we're making progress. We have highly segregated communities, even though if you look at Fresno as a whole, we look very diverse, but we're very segregated by census tract or zip code, however you mention us. And that is not good for anyone. We're also segregated by economics, and we know that's horrible when you end up with conditions of concentrated poverty, which are basically quicksand that don't allow people to move up even if they want to. So we have a lot of work to do, and mostly you do that by having healthy neighborhoods that anyone would choose to live in and everyone can feel proud of.
Miguel, focus, and you can do this in 60 or 70 seconds.
I'm not going to attempt to answer that question in 60 seconds, Bill, because it would be a false conversation that it's a complete disservice. You don't engage in conversation about race relations with 60 seconds left in a debate. The first thing you have to do is recognize that it exists, and it's deep. And some wounds, by the time they're barely starting to heal, they get reopened up. We are, let's be frank, we're one shooting caught on video away from this city quickly going on fire. You've seen it in Sacramento. You've seen it in Tulare. There's some real deep embedded challenges in our city, and it starts with the economy. Gentrification, it's real. It happened in Lowell and Jefferson. It's happened in the Fulton Business Corridor. It will happen in Chinatown and West Fresno next if we're not thoughtful. Those are real hard conversations that we have to be able to flesh out as a community, but the first step in that process is to acknowledge that it exists for good reason. And it's hard, but just because you can't solve it all doesn't mean you don't start with what's in front of you.
Tate Hill?
So recognizing that racism is integrated and ingrained in a number of our policies and institutions, we have to have a real conversation and have a mindset to really create change. I've been reading this book called The Color of Law, and it highlights a number of these issues around land use, how housing has been developed, how neighborhoods have been developed, and until we have a real mindset to address a number of these challenges, that we engage our institutions about their policies that are in place and are willing to make the investment to reverse a number of these issues, we will continue to see racism. But one of the things that's encouraging is I believe we have people within our city that want to make those changes. And we just have to have the courage, and I would be one of those that would have the courage to make that change.
Fresno has an ugly history, ugly racial history. The first deed I signed in the house that I bought restricted African American, well, Negroes, Armenians, Chinese, lots of different things. That's a deed that I had to buy, I had to sign in order to buy my first house. So I use that as an example that although Fresno has not, in my estimation, has not done a very good job in race relations, it's not insurmountable. Statistics would tell you that I should be serving 20 years in prison. I should be uneducated. I'm working on my 5th college degree right now. So although Fresno has not done does not have a very good history of race relations, I think that there are some signs on the horizon. And working with young people, looking around the room today, we have as many young people under 30 as we do over 30 here. I think those are all telltale signs that things are changing. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic that Fresno is going to go through some of those same metamorphoses with the millennials and opening up and listening to once they get in charge and push some of us old fuddy-duddies out of the way.
Craig?
I started.
Oh, you started.
Yes.
Okay, so we're all done there.
No,
So, hey, yeah, second crack at it. So let's go to closing statements, and if you would, present a picture to the audience somewhere in there of what District 3 would look like 5 years from now, when one of you likely will be ending the first term on the council. Miguel?
So first of all, thank you all for coming, especially my two kids who have managed not to jump around and disrupt the whole thing. So thank you, Diego and Anai. For 5 years from now, I envision that we're going to be opening our brand new college campus in West Fresno, right next to Gaston Middle School. That would be finally completing the educational corridor that West Fresno needs to move to the next phase of its evolution. We would also be reinvesting in Fulton Mall, in the stuff that nobody really looks at, what's underneath the ground. Without us actually adding additional capacity in the infrastructure of downtown, we can't allow for the development to occur. It's not big enough. So you would see in 5 years, new housing development taking place in the downtown corridor. You would also see bitwise with 2 or 3 more spots for the young professionals to be here. But you would also see Central Unified finally having those bottlenecks on the way to 99 finally improved, and us actually creating parks and neighborhoods where you can actually live and work there and enjoy yourself and not have to be stuck on your way to 99. So it is a place where the Tower District, vacant homes would be going away because they would be replaced with new, modern, and reinvested houses. Thank you for the time again.
Thank you. Tate Hill, your closing statement.
I also want to thank everyone that is here and engaging in this conversation. What I envision 5 years from now is one that the neighborhoods of District 3 are engaged and connected, not only to the city but to each other, that they're leveraging the resources that they have within each other, that also that our economy is growing, that we have the small business opportunities along different parts of our city, from downtown to West Fresno to central area, that when Savat goes to the park with his kids, that he can feel safe at those parks, and that my sister also can feel safe at the parks within our neighborhood. That we began to move the needle around homelessness within our community and began to address that with our county, and that the people of District 3 are inspired, that they are hopeful for their future, and that people want to move to District 3.
5 years from now, District 3 is going to be different no matter what we do. It's 5 years ago, District 3 is already different than it was in this area. So my concern is that you, the public, those of you who are going to be voting for us, do your homework. Make sure that you vote for the right person, the person that you believe is going to be able to make that change 5 years from now be something that you're happy with. What I'm looking for 5 years from now is that District 3 is a beehive. It's the beehive of the city. And if anybody knows anything about beehives, we may not understand what's going on in the beehive. It looks like chaos, but those bees understand what it is. They understand their role. They understand how they fit into the whole hive. And I want to see District 3 become the beehive that it should become. And the only way you're going to be able to get there is by you, the residents, you, the voters, doing your homework, making sure that what we say is actually what we've been doing. Make sure that what we say we're going to do is in our DNA and our history, and it's time for Miller in District 3.
Craig Sharton, last word to you.
Okay, the first thing, and I haven't really brought it up today, is we have a high level of lead in the children's blood in South Fresno and District 3 in particular, in the Lowell neighborhood, almost 3 times what it was in Flint, Michigan. At the end of 5 years, we'll know what the sources of that are. We will have fought for every dollar for remediation, and we'll be testing our children to know that that problem is solved, working with all of our partners. That is an absolute, it affects everything, everyone in our city. The other part is that every neighborhood is going to have demonstrated improvement. Every neighborhood is going to get together, identify their priorities, vote on their priorities. We're going to work on those priorities and bring resources, and at the end of 4 years, every single neighborhood, including the commercial districts, are going to say, here's where we started, here's where we've improved. And once we do that, every other district in the city is going to demand the same thing.
Thank you. Could the audience give a hand to the candidates here tonight? And again, we'd like to thank our partners in this effort, our first GV Wire political forum, so to speak, and our partners, Fresno's leading young professionals, and also the Community Media Access Collaborative. If you're watching tonight, tell your friends to check out what's on CMAC, so that they'll be educated when they go to the polls as well. I want to thank all our panelists, and Amanda, our timekeeper, did a great job there, and thanks for everyone coming out tonight.